I've heard of something called the hustle lie. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
That the hustle, the good hustle of working hard, grinding, doing everything you can to be successful might be a lie.
What we're going to unpack today is, what is it? Is it this dark side or is it the bright side?
Okay.
We both have opinions and perspectives. Maybe we're going to agree. Hopefully we will disagree. My opinion is, it's not a good thing.
Intentionality with Paul Kempff, for people who lead with intention and live with impact. My friend, welcome back. First episode of 2026.
2026, here we go. And it's the end of January already.
Yes, can you believe it?
Crazy.
You chose the topic.
I did.
Interesting topic. Why don't you tell us what are we going to be talking about today?
We are going to be discussing and unpacking this concept and idea of the hustle culture. Now, let me just frame it for the audience and for you where this concept started for me, right? So my dear friend and business partner who's now retired and living his best life in Barcelona, if you're listening,
Lovely.
Still jealous, Marnus Broodryk. When I met him, his business is called, not the business that operates, the holdco, is called the Hustle Fund. And one day, him and I got into a conversation because I was in awe of him. I was a bit of a crony, a follower before we really became friends. And from the outside, I was observing Marnus as this incredible, busy, successful entrepreneur, always got plans, diary packed. I remember the first time him and I met, he said I must come and see him in January. And then when I phoned his PA, Nabila, at the time, she said, look, he's only got 30 minutes. That's it, Fran. You can get 30 minutes in his diary. And it was such a cool meeting. She would come in after the first 30-minute slot and he'll say, push it out. An hour, push it out. Hour and a half. And I felt very special because Marnus Broodryk is changing his calendar for me. But that observation of his behavior and the fact that his holdco is called, to this day, the Hustle Fund, was my first introduction to the concept of, well, this is what hustling is, and I love the idea. What we're going to unpack today is, what is it? Is it this dark side or is it the bright side?
Okay.
We both have opinions and perspectives. Maybe we're going to agree. Hopefully we will disagree. I would like for us to end up today in some sort of space where we can position it based on our perspectives. What is it? Is it good or is it bad, basically? And should 2026 be the year that we continue to hustle? My opinion is, it's not a good thing.
I've heard of something called the hustle lie. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
That the hustle, the good hustle of working hard, grinding, doing everything you can to be successful might be a lie.
100%. So to elaborate on that, when you then reach some sort of point of success, or the top of the mountain, or the exit, or the relationship, or the rand value in the bank, or whatever it is that you are hustling towards, it's empty, it's filled with...
It's unfulfilling.
Unfulfilling. Thank you.
Firstly, I think it's a great follow-up to the Success Addiction episode, and if you haven't watched it yet, please go back and watch it. I think there's a good link between those two episodes. I also think that maybe it's a good time to just define what is the hustle lie.
Yes.
You know, because in my research, I actually found a great definition of the hustle lie.
Okay.
So just before we unpack it, let me give it to you. The hustle lie is the unspoken cultural agreement that constant productivity, sacrificing personal well-being, and perpetually being on are direct paths to happiness and success.
Sure.
So let's unpack that.
Sure.
I want to quickly start my part of this conversation off with a book that I read many, many years ago. It's called the 4 Hour Workweek. Have you read it?
Tim Ferriss.
Yes. So here's the story around the book. And it's not about the contents of the book. It's more about something that happened around this book. So very first time in our business at FFG that I was asked to be a managing director of a board was in 2009.
Okay.
It was a small little company in our group. I had taken responsibility for that company for a while. We had taken that company from being just a business unit to being a fully fledged Pty Limited, and I was appointed as the managing director. And I still remember that very first board meeting that was called, which I was supposed to lead. I had no experience of being a director. I had no experience of how to lead a board or what you did in a board meeting. I was very intimidated by this thing because there were people there that were experienced directors in the FFG group of companies that were going to sit there and listen to what I had to say. And I thought I'd start the meeting off by giving everybody a book as a present. Went to exclusive books, looked for a book, and eventually stumbled on the 4 Hour Workweek. And I still don't know why. I cannot explain what the thinking or reasoning behind it was. But I thought this book would be a great present.
To the board.
Yes.
A new board.
And I bought all the copies of this book and I gave it to each of the directors at the beginning of the meeting. And here's the relevance of the story. In my mind, that was a good target. If we can build a business, because that's ultimately the idea of the 4 Hour Workweek, if you can build a business that can work without you having to work all the time, that can build a passive income without you having to hustle and grind and work hard the whole time, you've reached success in your life. And I kind of like that dream. Here's the interesting thing that happened. Over the next 17 years, the exact opposite happened. I didn't have 4 Hour Workweeks. In fact, I didn't have 4 hour days. I had much longer days, much longer work weeks than anything the 4 Hour Workweek tells us is the way you have to do things. And I think that's, to me, kind of where I'm stuck in at the moment, is this constant hustle, this constant grind, knowing there's a different way to do it, but simply not finding the ways and means to get it done.
Have you met someone that is living that life?
No. I imagine Marnus might be an example of that.
Marnus achieved what he achieved by doing the exact opposite to set himself up to do what he can do now.
Explain.
Okay. While he was inside his businesses, he was one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And there's various levels to it, but let's start with the obvious thing, hours. He did not have hours. If he wanted to work at 10, 11, 12 at night, he did that. If he needed to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, he did that. If he had to work on a Sunday, he did that. He was extremely disciplined during the day. No small talk. You can't just walk into his office. You have to have a meeting. You need to be prepared. You need to bring an agenda. He's an extremely structured human being with an incredible mind to solve problems. So when I met him and observed him, he was the definition of the hustle culture, aka the hustle fund. That success or that behavior set him up to be successful, immigrate to Barcelona, retire, but guess what? The bean counter still continued with people hustling and working really, really hard there. He benefited from it because of the system he set up in 12 years. 12 years he built the bean counter. Not by running a 4 Hour Workweek, not by taking off Fridays and playing golf, by doing the opposite. So I ask you this question, have you seen it? Because it's conflict that I'm faced with as well.
No, come to think of it, to answer your question, no. I can't think of a single example.
So does it exist?
Maybe it doesn't. The best example I could think of was somebody I know well that retired at 52. That's kind of the earliest example that I can think of. There's nobody in their 30s that I know of that have actually retired and that are financially well off.
Okay, that's one side of it. My question actually refers to, have you seen someone not hustling?
No, not at all.
And being successful? No, I haven't
either.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so now maybe for the slightly younger generations, I often observe this need for pure freedom, pure flexibility, but still wanting success and financial freedom.
That's exceptionally difficult.
And I haven't seen that either. And so one of the things that I think might be happening, Paul, is social media. Is this dream that is sold. And in HR specifically, we are annually confronted with topics like mental health, work-life balance, burnout, work-life harmony, career catfishing. There's a trend I spoke about last year, micro-retirement, where people work for 18 months and then retire for 6 months and come back and work for 18 months and retire for 6 months. And like all of these buzzwords are floating around our minds, influencing the way we think. But no one is actually showing you how to do it. You and I both believe it doesn't actually even exist.
No, you're right. It doesn't.
But now you're conditioned to believe that world could be there for you. And now you start fighting the hustle culture. And you start believing that actually I don't have to work that hard. And influencers on YouTube tell you, well, run an e-commerce or drop shipping or this or that thing and have your business make you millions while you chill on the beach. Okay, well, show me an example of that, because then we all will be doing it. Doesn't exist.
Neither of us know of an example. I have a big smile on my face because you spoke about micro-retirement. I saw a podcast last year, and I cannot remember where it was, where this guy was telling the host that he does micro-retirement. Every Friday he takes off. And the guy said to him, it's not micro-retirement, it's a weekend.
I do long weekends.
It's a weekend, yeah. I thought it was quite funny. Okay, but on this point, at least I think we're heading somewhere that makes a lot of sense to me, and that is you will agree with me that these different perspectives of the hustle and the grind and how hard you have to work in order to be successful is also something that has to do with different stages in your life.
Yes.
Different generations, because you and I are different generations.
Yeah.
I'm X, you're millennial, if I remember correctly. And for me...
You're not a baby boomer?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, hey,
just
watch
checking.
it. For me, the hustle is still real. It's still there. The hard work is still there. But I think it's maybe slightly different than what it is for you, or what it is even for 20-year-olds in the next generation again. Here's the most important question, and I'm interested to see what the answer to this is, because so far it's very similar. Do you ever shut off completely?
No.
Would you answer phone calls, WhatsApps from clients over the weekend?
Yes, I often do.
Okay, that I think is a big difference, because there for me, there's a hard line. I get incredibly frustrated when I get contacted by people, especially if it's not an emergency, because there's an important difference.
Yeah.
If there's an emergency and somebody wants to speak to me over the weekend, by all means, I have complete respect for that. But you want to check in on something that you could just as easily have left until Monday.
Yeah.
Why on earth bother me either over a weekend, and here it's even more important, 5 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And that's where I've started drawing the line in my life. There should be a cutoff. Now, the cutoff isn't, let's say strictly 8 to 5. But generally speaking, if you try and get hold of me before 7 in the morning or after 6 in the evening, I'd rather leave it till the next day or till later in the day.
Yeah. Very interesting. Obviously, the first question comes to mind, why do I do it? Or why do I allow it? I honestly don't know. Maybe it's super selfish, where I believe I'm that important that people should be able to get a hold of me because I'm important, or I can give you an answer, or I'm the answer to your question, or I'm going to help you. I'm not entirely sure why I do it.
I've got a completely opposite way of looking at it. I know somebody very well. They work in our organization, who actually puts their cell phone off on a Saturday afternoon.
Wow.
Completely. And does a complete tech detox from Saturday afternoon until Sunday evening.
Wow.
So it's not a question of do they answer calls or WhatsApp.
You can't even reach them.
You can't even get hold of them. Not even if you're a friend or a family member can you get hold of them. And he's spoken to me about the experience of it, the freedom that it gives you, how it makes you focus on other things when for an entire 24-hour period, you can't even check your phone.
Yeah.
There's no social media in your life, nothing like that. You get to spend time with your wife and your kids.
Sure.
Maybe
sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And then the anxiety in me about being offline kicks in, right?
I think it'll be crazy level anxiety for you.
Wow.
All right. Speaking of anxiety and speaking of, this whole hustle thing, how do you know this hustle thing is not working for you? What warning signs are there?
Checking how I feel. You mentioned it earlier. Listen to your body.
Yes.
Yeah. I think another toxic side of it, and I briefly alluded to it earlier, is what are you chasing and what do you feel like when you get there? And I mean, this doesn't have to be existential, well, I'll tell you when I'm 70 and I retire. This could be, how do you feel on a Friday? How do you feel on a Sunday evening? Are you absolutely exhausted come Friday and the language in your own mind is, I cannot wait for the weekend, which is a very South African thing to say.
And on Sunday evening, I dread Monday morning.
I dread Monday mornings, right? I get the blues. That's another warning sign, because if we break hustle into behavior, the most obvious definition is, well, I'm working hard and I believe it will benefit me. Okay, but to the extent of what? And that's where I'm struggling and maybe tussling with this concept with you, but also in my own head is, I love working hard because of the progress that I'm making and the incremental, Eric speaks about accretion, like those small little differences that I can observe around me, in my diary, in our growth in our clientele, in our employees' growth. Like I can see that. And it is a function of everybody working hard. Now, is there more to it than just working hard? And the definition is actually not helping us unpack this more. And so the conditioning goes, well, I just need to work really hard. And then someone else comes with a bumper sticker and I just work smarter. Okay, well, if you work smarter and you can achieve more in 6 hours, apply that same in 8 hours and you'll actually deliver 10 hours worth of work in 8 hours is what I would say.
Yeah.
So I struggle with that. So that's another warning sign is why are you doing it and how do you feel when you reach the Friday or the Sunday? We spoke about it earlier, burnout, fatigue, mental health issues, depression. But those can't be, Paul, those can't be functions of working hard. I think we're designed to work hard. I think if you're religious, I am, the Lord designed us to work. He did not design us to sit around on the beach the whole day. So it's really difficult, this one for me.
Okay, you love working hard. I love working hard. You've given a few great warning signs that I think one has to be careful of. I've got a few more that I just want to quickly share.
Yeah.
One of them is particularly relevant for me, and that is when you confuse busy with productive.
Sure, that's good.
So all you do is you just try and be busy because you're hustling, but you don't always look at what are you busy with.
Yeah.
And for this one, I've got a great hack that I've discovered. It is part of what I did last year with this whole taking everything to the next level, where I used a spreadsheet to monitor things that I do in my life. You know me and my spreadsheets.
Yes.
But this particular one was where I really tried for 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, to ask myself the question at the end of every single day, did I do something impactful today? So I think it's important that you find a way of keeping yourself honest. Am I busy or productive? And it's a simple question. Did I do something to simply be active, or did I actually do something that had an impact?
That's incredible.
And I think if you can go a week and say, at the end of the week, I've had 5 days where I've had an impact. And to me, an impact is one of two things. You've done something meaningful in your work that has moved the needle, or very importantly, you've made a difference in the life of a colleague or a client. I think you've had an impact. And that's how I measure impact and ensure that you're not necessarily just busy, but that you're productive.
Can I just add to that?
Please, go for it.
I always use the analogy of sales. If you close a massive client once a week that far exceeds your target, that pays you more than enough commission, that takes you to your happiness level, it allows you to pay for the car that you want to drive. I honestly don't care that you play golf.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it's an easy example, right? Because it's tied to a target and to money, and you can see the needle moving effect. But versus the salesperson who's making 200 calls a week, not ever thinking about their script, not updating or listening to their recording, telling their wife or their spouse or their partner how hard they are working, but there's no results.
Have you heard of something called the Parkinson's Law?
No.
Parkinson's Law is the adage that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion.
Wow.
So the point you're making is a very relevant one. If I have 8 hours a day that I have to work, I can find 8 hours worth of work.
Yes.
And I will get that work done in 8 hours. But the moment you think a little bit differently about your work, isn't there a way of doing that work in 5 hours? And then you have the choice. Do I then only work 5 hours, or do I find something else to do in the other 3 hours that can also be productive, that can also have an impact?
Yeah.
I love that idea of Parkinson's Law when we talk about this hustle culture. Because again, what I find is a lot of people are more busy than productive. Are finding ways of filling their time with the work that they have to do.
And we might get to it in the episode, but let me just chuck it in because it's in my mind now. One of the ways that you, the audience, you and I, that you can check yourself on this is to associate metrics to it. If you are working to some sort of metric, whether it be a daily or a weekly or a monthly metric, that is going to be a very good indication of productivity versus busyness.
Exactly.
Because busyness will not get you your metric. Being productive means you are producing what? Well, very often results, right? Or something that you can look at, reflect upon, change.
But you have to be able to measure the outcome.
100%. You need metrics.
Absolutely.
And those metrics don't just apply to sales. They can apply to your spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Did I greet someone today? If that's my intention for the year, I want to be more friendly. If the answer is no, the metric you hit is 0. You did not greet someone. You bring that metric to the forefront, okay? And then you interpret your behavior in relation to the metric. Okay, well, I walked around a lot. Okay, so what's the next thing to do? Make eye contact and smile.
Yeah, and greet people, yeah.
So metrics.
Agreed.
Is a good.
All right.
A good way.
Here's another one a sign that you are trapped in the hustle mentality. You treat rest as a weakness, not a strategy. Because I often look at people that tell me that they're tired, and I think, wow, I can't believe you're tired. You know, do you know how tired I must feel with the hours that I've put in or the sleep that I've had?
Yeah, and you don't hear me complaining.
Exactly. But I think the point here is you must be careful of viewing rest as a weakness and not a strategy.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that I'm certainly trying to do in 2026. I've heard everything, read everything there is about the value of sleep.
Yeah.
I've realized I'm messing up that part of my life.
Sure.
You know my goal of getting to 100. One of the main things around longevity is you need to sleep well.
Yeah.
So that is certainly something that I'm focusing on more. And I think it's important to understand that rest is part of your strategy towards success.
And I think to your point around productivity is if you know what you're doing and there's a metric associated to it, then you can calmly switch off when you want to switch off and then calmly switch back on again.
Okay.
And that's maybe where the busyness catches people and traps them into, I need to hustle. I need to be busy.
So you've just highlighted another sign. I'll just repeat it, but you've said everything about it, and that is you're always on and available. That is definitely a sign that you're trapped in the hustle lie, and the way out of it is to create and enforce firm boundaries. Simple as that.
Yeah.
The next one is your identity and your work are the same thing. You spoke about over-identifying with your work. It's important to understand that happens when you are chasing a goal that doesn't excite you. You spoke about it earlier. When people just can't retire, they don't see themselves retiring. But I think it's often linked to that over-identification with work, and that's linked to chasing that goal in life that doesn't excite you, that doesn't eventually lead to the fulfillment we spoke about earlier.
I love that.
All right. We've spoken about the impacts of this hustle culture, this hustle lie, mental fatigue, physical health issues, strained relationships, diminished creativity, a pervasive sense of unfulfillment despite external achievements. I actually think there's a lot of people out there who look successful, who seems to have mastered the art of the hustle, but I have a sneaky suspicion that underneath the surface they're struggling because you just can't keep going with this hustle. And I'm just wondering how many people out there, how many people listening to this podcast today are pretending that the hustle is working for them, but it's not really working the way they want it to work.
Yeah. I would be curious, fascinated. Drop us a comment down below if you want to be vulnerable. Share with us. I think that's a great question to ask.
I think the one thing that I do want to say now is the reason why I believe the hustle lie is not sustainable and not fulfilling is because hard work is essential for achievement. We've said it many times today, but the hustle culture promotes quantity over quality and output over a well-being mindset. And I think that's two important things to focus on.
Yeah.
Quality versus quantity, and it's always about the output versus, but what about my well-being?
You know, and when you go and look at influencers or people that you follow on social media, if you are constantly posting, everything is a story, everything is a reel, you know, where do you find time to just be present, either by yourself or with the person next to you, if you're always switched on, if you're always online?
But speaking of social media, don't you think working hard, hustling, especially on social media, has become like a badge of honor?
100%. And that's what I said earlier, is this is creating the perception and the lie to people observing other people online that this is what it should look like. And to your point earlier, you don't know what's in the influencer's heart as they're shooting that story.
Exactly.
I spoke to someone the other day who said to me, there are some examples of really, really successful people who don't like the limelight. They're not online. They're not on stage. They're not on a podcast. And they're not available on their phone 24/7. And I would love to hear from them. What is their take on this conversation?
Is there anything, Francois, that you think one can do to escape this hustle culture? A way you can set up your life to ensure that the hustle is not having a detrimental effect on your life?
I always go back to, and you might have heard me say this before, I always go back to the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? I think it is critical for us, especially when you start the new year. We're at the end of January in 2026, for those of you, if you're listening to us, and it's the year 2030, to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? But not just ask it, like deeply go and sit in it, even if it's uncomfortable. Just go and sit in it for a second and let your thoughts come to you and reflect on them. Maybe journal, grab a pen, write them down, send yourself a voice note. What comes up in your heart and in your mind around your why? Because if you're not grounded in the reason behind your behavior or your actions, it's really hard to be in control, to set those boundaries that you spoke about earlier, to determine when you're on and when you're off. Because if you will have a definition, it's like company culture. Company culture is either proactively designed by leadership in an intentional way that drives certain behavior, or if left unnoticed, you in any way end up with a culture, and typically it then becomes toxic and bad. Same with this. If you don't define your why, the world and social media will define it for you. And what is that definition screaming at us right now? It is that the hustle culture is the only way to get to the top. So you have to be always on, always busy, always posting, always running around, always not having time for anything and anybody except your over-identified career, which is your busyness.
I try to look for alternatives to the hustle life.
Yeah.
I try to see if there wasn't something else out there that made sense to me. And I found a few interesting things. They speak about the redefined hustle or the gentle career, where the focus is not on being lazy, but on finding a sustainable rhythm. And then I found something really interesting. There's a guy who wrote a book. It's called Slow Productivity, The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout. It was written by a guy called Cal Newport. Now, I haven't read the book yet. I only found this out yesterday, or I discovered the book yesterday, so it's definitely on my reading list to go to. But there's a few interesting ideas that he tosses around. He starts off firstly by speaking about pseudo productivity, but I think we've spoken about that, where you're busy without being productive. But ultimately, he says slow productivity has got three core principles. The first principle is to do fewer things. The second part of it is to work at a natural pace. Instead of just rushing through tasks, find that sustainable rhythm that I just spoke about. And then very importantly, the third core element of slow productivity is to obsess over quality. It's to make sure everything you do is really about quality instead of quantity.
Yeah.
I kind of like that as let's call it an alternative to the hustle culture.
One of the most profound books I ever read was after I listened to you and Mark Sham, and you spoke about the Ikigai.
Yes.
What a phenomenal episode. By the way, go and check that out if you haven't. And so I picked up the book, or I think you borrowed it, or I can't remember, but I got the book and I read it, and I was fascinated by the Japanese culture. And what you just read to me just immediately triggered in my mind
Something about that.
Now, have you, and this is maybe where we deeply, and it starts with myself and with you, we deeply have to be very honest with ourselves around the why and what we want. Because I'm going to generalize now, but if I think of the Japanese, especially the way the Ikigai book describes that community, it's definitely not associated in my mind with wealth and with status and with materialistic things and international travel and cars and the brand new golf clubs and da-da-da-da. It's not that. So, and I'm not saying that's wrong. A lot of that is me. But if you go with the slow productivity concept and you go with the Ikigai Japanese culture, you're going to reach the 100 years old, by the way. And you're probably going to have this beautiful balanced life filled with incredible relationships and community. But there is a compromise. There are certain elements, and I can be completely wrong, that it's not associated with. And I think that's maybe up for all of us to unpack and decide is can you get to that side with this side, or is this side always correlated with this type of behavior and that side is correlated with that type of behavior?
The one thing I just want to add to everything I've said right now is one of the criticisms of the self-help industry and podcasts like ours and YouTube videos and books and all those kind of things is it's easy to say something like obsess over quality or do fewer things. I want us to really just leave the listeners and the viewers with some really actionable strategies that have worked in our lives. I don't know if you have any. I have a few that I quickly want to share. And the most important one for me, maybe I've shared it with you before, is this whole urgent versus important matrix. It's something that I actively use in my life. I've got the lists, and it's really about putting everything in your life, especially your to-do lists, into an urgent and important box. It's actually 4 boxes. Urgent and important, urgent but not important, important but not urgent, and not important, not urgent.
Yes.
And the idea behind that matrix is to get you really focused on doing the things that are urgent and important first. If you don't get to the others in a day, that's fine. Once you've done the urgent and important, rather go and do the important things than the urgent things. And the one thing you must really try and avoid is the not urgent and not important things. So that to me was a very important one. I think the power of no. There was a movie once long ago with Jim Carrey. I can't even remember what the movie was called, but there was a self-help guru, and he said, in your life for the next month, just say yes to everything.
Yes Man was the book.
Yes Man. There you
the
go.
movie, yes.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Do you remember the movie?
Yeah, I did. Can you believe it? New me.
Excellent. But I think the opposite is true, is realizing the power of no and saying no sometimes in your life.
Yes.
Especially to the things that are not important and not urgent. I think it's important to schedule rest and play. I think it's a crucial part of your strategy.
I love that.
And then what I said earlier about the disconnection, mindful disconnection, setting the boundaries, disconnecting, and finding time to reflect, to meditate. I know it's something that you do. I think those things are incredibly important. But it is important to also say there are certain boundaries. Some things I need to change to have better flow, to create more magic in your life, to be able to relax more.
Yes, I love that.
I'm certainly going to try and use that word relax more in my life, but I'm still getting up at 5 in the morning. Actually at 4 most mornings. I'm still working these long days, but I'm looking for those opportunities to change small little things that can help us to avoid the negative effects of the hustle culture.
I think in closing from my side, brilliant episode. And when you only have these two extremes where I'm only always completely on and hustling, killing myself, or I'm in la la land and money is just going to flow where energy goes, right? With no disrespect to the person who loves that phrase. I think that's where you're in trouble. It's not this either or, counterbalance, yin yang, black and white thing, and you have to pick a side, and tough luck for whatever side you pick. I think we've described a harmony and a balance between being on and being off, and that equals longevity.
And that, I think, is where we are in full agreement. I really want to end off this episode today to challenge everybody listening, everybody watching this masterclass, to find one little thing that you can do in your life to loosen this grip that this hustle culture has on our lives. To try and find one little small intentional step that you can take to prioritize your well-being over this endless productivity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending time with us, Francois. It's been great as always. I think it was a great episode.
Fantastic.
I look forward to getting this released out there. It was wonderful, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, looking forward to the year. Might be a prosperous year for us where we find time to follow magic, relax, but still achieve our goals.
Awesome.
Awesome.
You've been listening to Intentionality, where we grow together. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a rating. And if this helped you today, share it with someone else on the same journey. Until next time, keep showing up with intention.